A lot of children who are neurotypical are showing signs that they're on the autism spectrum. They don't know how to hold eye contact. They don't know how to have a conversation. They don't know how to express themselves. They don't know how to read social cues because they had an iPad in their face the whole time that they were growing up.
Today's guest is a licensed clinical psychologist, founder and mother with over 20 years inspiring and transforming people's lives. Joining me for a second time on the podcast is Dr. Saliha Afridi.
Someone who has spent the last few years really trying to get to know myself better, trying to increase my self-awareness. How do I raise my child to have those tools from an earlier age?
You being who you are is going to teach your child that. The best gift you can give to your child is a self-aware parent. Whether it's your dreams, whether it's your hopes, whether it's your unprocessed emotions, whether it's your wounds. That's something you should take to therapy, not play out on your child. I will give him anything, but I will not let him get on social media. The lowest use of technology is in Silicon Valley.
Wow.
The people who create this stuff don't give it to their children. We want to create children with a strong sense of self. And the thing that's getting in the way of that strong sense of self, I believe, and I'm sure the research will soon enough confirm, is
All right, Balancers. Today's guest is joining us for the second time on the show, which I'm really excited about. The first time we got to know her a lot. We spoke a lot about your life, raising 4 kids, having your business, doing all the things you're doing. And what I loved about that conversation, and particularly about your work, is you really empower people to understand themselves better. I'm now in a phase of my life where I'm entering parenthood. I've got my first baby on the way. You've got 4. And one thing I'm really interested in at the moment is understanding, how do we take and apply all this work we've done on ourselves, and how do we raise self-aware and independent kids? And I feel like it's a big category and I have a lot of questions. So I'm very excited to have Dr. Saliha Afridi back on the podcast today. Welcome back.
Thank you so much, Erica, and congratulations to you.
Thank you so much. I'm honoured to be joining the parenthood realm.
It truly is an honour.
Yeah. You know, it's actually, before I ask you my kind of first question, I've been thinking a lot about how I'm at this moment of my life where I'm one version of myself. And like, once I start having kids, like, I'm going to be a mum, you know, like for the rest of my life. And whilst I'm still me, like, that's a big transition. And I'm at this like small window just before, like, I'm not going to be this version of myself again. And so I'm trying to like be really present with her and just sit with, you know, this version of me. Just, do you have any kind of words of wisdom or things you would have said to yourself just before like you became a mum, when you were on this transition?
Oh, it's so beautiful to hear you speak about it so consciously. At that time, I was definitely not conscious of versions of myself. And so the fact that you are, I think, is beautiful. And obviously there is so much joy that we have, and we have a lot of space for that joy of motherhood, joy of having children. But we don't make a lot of space for the grief that comes with that, because there will be an end to this version of you, and there will be a birth of a new version of you. And I think the fact that you're honoring that, and the fact that you're saying that there are feelings that are coming up that are difficult, I think is really important to honor that. I did that work later. I didn't do it while I was going through it, but I think the fact that you're doing it as you're going through it is beautiful. But to say, yes, there is grief in losing this part of this version of you, I should say, not this part of you, this version of you, and becoming another.
Yeah, and I think the same goes for like your marriage, right? Or like your relationship. It's like it has one version, and then you guys become like mum and dad together. Yeah. Like I feel like that also, yes. I see a lot of people online talking about, you know, the grief that comes with losing that free kind of relationship that you have, and then you're transitioning. So
it's a very big stressor on a marriage and on a human being. And we don't acknowledge those things. I think there's a lot of beautiful things that are said about parenthood and motherhood, but we don't actually acknowledge what a stressor it is on a marriage, what a stressor it is on a human being. For working women who want to honor that part of themselves still, that it can add an element that needs to be discussed and made space for.
Yeah, I agree. Well, the topic I want to get into today is I feel like it's a big one because I don't really know where I land on it. I've only really started to think about it now, so I'm excited to get stuck into it. My first question is, as someone who has spent the last few years really trying to get to know myself better, trying to increase my self-awareness, my attention now is turning to how do I raise my child to have those tools from an earlier age? And so I guess my first question is, what age can I start doing that? And what are the most important initial things to teach them first? Because I feel like there's probably a whole menu option, but what are the most important things to start with?
So I can hear the anxiety that you have about wanting to do this right. So I want to just name that how do I get this right? It's a story that not a lot of people know, but when I was pregnant with my first child, I was in my doctoral program. Actually, all three of my children were born during the doctoral. The first three were born in the doctoral program. And I was so anxious about how do I get this right? I got to get this right. And this anxiety actually moves me into this kind of action. And so I started reading a lot of parenting books. And I read parenting books at that time. We didn't have social media. This is 20 years ago now. My daughter is 19, so I was...
You wouldn't think it, but
yeah,
it's true.
20 years ago. And I read, and I ended up doing my dissertation in parenting because I was so obsessed with wanting to get it right. Little did I know that the kids bring in their own set of lessons and their own set of teachings. And it was very important for me to have that information, but also knowing that I'm going to be learning on the job. You can read whatever, people can tell you whatever, they will give you whatever advice. I will say to you whatever, but in the end, you will learn on the job. So that's the first thing that I will say. As for your question, when it comes to self-awareness, and how do I teach my child that? You being who you are is going to teach your child that. The best gift you can give to your child is a self-aware parent. So I would say continue working on that. And children do as we do, not as we say. And if they see you taking accountability, if they see you naming a feeling, if they see you saying, I'm sorry, they will do the same. So it's really important that you do conscious parenting. Conscious parent. You become a conscious parent. And through that, your child will become a conscious and more self-aware child. Now, I will say that there are some things that you can do as a parent, which you can start even at birth. You don't have to wait till they're 1 or 2 or verbal or etc. You can start by looking at the child, the mirroring that you do, the naming of the emotions that you do, the tracking that you do. Oh, you see, you look really excited. Oh, you're so happy you got your bottle. Or doing this. They don't understand what you're doing, but they can feel it, they can sense it. And what's happening now, and there's research about this too, is that when mothers are breastfeeding or bottle feeding, they're looking at the phone. And that's the time they catch up, they send their messages, they do what they need to do, and this eye contact is not happening. And that is causing a lot of dysregulation in a child and that lack of safety in a child. So that's one thing that I would say, just watch out for that. Obviously, there will be times where you will be multitasking, but as much as possible, mirror the child. Oh, you're happy to see me. Oh, I'm happy to see you, that type of stuff. Also, expand your emotional vocabulary. Most people don't have feeling words beyond 6. I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm upset, I'm mad.
Excited.
excited, is surprised, and that's it. But the more granular you are in your emotional vocabulary, the more granular they will be. And the research also shows that the more granular you are in your expression of emotions, the more regulated you are in the sort of emotional space. So, for example, if someone says, I'm anxious, by the time you're anxious, you're already up here. But there's something that happens down here. You are unsettled, you're worried, you're concerned, you're jittery. There's
a build-up.
There's a build-up to where you hit anxious, and then after anxious, you hit panic. So get really granular in your expression. My colleague and I created a board game called Smart Heart. I'll actually send you that board game. And that board game is about getting better at feeling feelings. And part of that board game, and it's all based on emotional intelligence principles. And it really is about emotional literacy. It's about empathy. It's about social interactions. How do you communicate those emotions in a way that is healthy? And that is something you can start to do with your children at a very young age. So emotional literacy, emotional communication, talking about your emotions as you feel, I'm so frustrated right now that I can't get this bottle open. Or I feel really angry right now because this person is late and I don't like it when they're late. They're just sitting in the back, in the car seat maybe, but they're hearing you say this and they're saying, oh, this is what it feels like, or this is what it sounds like when someone is expressing their emotions. So those are two things. So working on your self-awareness, continue to work on that. This is a never-ending journey that you will be on. You are always becoming.
Sure.
So keep focused on that, and then also focus on building an emotional literacy in your children at a very young age.
Yeah, no, I really like that advice, and I completely agree. It's not like I'm now having a kid, becoming a parent, and all my work is at a halt and I'm this whole perfect human. I know that for me anyway, this, and the reason I started this podcast is this interest of mine is a lifelong pursuit. Like I want to get to know myself for the rest of my life, and I know that I'll never get to the end. There's no end in doing that.
Yeah.
So that is really nice advice.
I will say though that being a mother is not just a role. It is an extremely powerful archetype. You become a mother. This is not just a role that you play. It is also a role, but it is an archetype. And the power of an archetype is that it can be all-consuming. And if you don't engage with that archetype in a conscious way, it will consume you. And so we think, oh, I would like to do this and I would like to continue this. But when the archetype shows up and your protection and your need to control and your need to, your instincts all show up, that is when people lose themselves. And that is when everything you thought you were going to do no longer is, because you are now possessed by the archetype of the mother.
Well, I guess this is no different to the archetype of being a business owner, or when you step.
It's different. Being a business owner is not an archetype.
Okay, so what's the difference? Explain it to me.
So a role is very much defined by society, and it's an external thing. An archetype is universal, it's timeless, it's not defined by culture, and it is internal. And so, like the warrior, the lover, the mother, the father, these are archetypes and they're universal energies. So even when someone has not given birth, they could be possessed by the mother archetype. They could be playing out the mother with their colleagues or with their parents or with their siblings, because they have the mother archetype very strong inside of them, and they're possessed by that mother archetype. So when you become the mother and you now give birth to the child, that's when you know that that mother archetype is extremely potent inside of you.
Right.
So that is very different than playing a role, just a role. Of course, there's roles. We feed them, we raise them, we take them to school. That's all a role. But then there's an instinctual, universal blueprint of a mother that gets switched on. That is what I'm talking about. That's not, a business owner doesn't have that.
Sure.
The business owner might become a mother right? I might relate to my business as if it was a child, because a mother archetype got triggered in me because I gave birth to this business. And so all the things that a mother would do, I would do for this business.
Right.
But the role that I play is a business owner.
So how do you, like, I'm trying to, I guess, work out if you have this archetype and it's so inherently part of who you are, arguably that is like a part of your identity, right? So what's the line between you going too far into that and losing yourself and just fully expressing and that's just who you are? Like, how do you know whether what am I trying to ask? Like, is there a line where you're too possessed by it? Like, how do you know if you've lost yourself within that versus if that's all of who you are?
I think knowing that you are a whole person, and we have many archetypes inside of us, and we have many roles that we play, and we have many things that we enjoy doing, and we have many people that we enjoy seeing. Now, all of a sudden, if this thing becomes the only thing and you only worry about this and you're only thinking about this and you're only consumed by this and your life revolves around this, okay, I would be a little bit like, what else is going on? Mm-hmm. Like, how do we expand on that? How do you stay connected to other parts of you, knowing that you're going to come in and out of this possession maybe, and that might be part of your journey. Mm-hmm. But I have seen nobody come to midlife where they did not have some regret. Whether you're a mother, whether you're not mother, whether you mother too much, whether you mother too little, whether you were a stay-at-home mom, whether you were a working mom. I have seen no one come to midlife without regret, because there's always something you could have done differently. So I would say that, yes, it will be your journey, but there are many parts of you, and how can we stay connected to all those parts of you? The learner, the seeker, the person who just likes to go work out and, and not have to do baby gym all the, you see what I'm saying? Like, there are times you can take for yourself to stay connected to yourself. And there will be times where you will be connected to your mother. I think this is where the guilt kicks in for mothers, where they say, oh, I shouldn't be doing this because I could have been doing that. I could have been spending time with her on this walk or my child on this walk. And now I'm walking here by myself. Take time for yourself. Make that part of your routine.
Yeah, and this kind of echoes why it's so important to, I guess, have a self-awareness practice or some sort of relationship with yourself, right, before you embark maybe on something like parenting, which can be, the way I see it is, I feel like I have all these things about myself that I see that I enjoy, that's a part of who I am, and then I'm making all this extra space for this new archetype or even this new role. But it's kind of like, how does that fit into everything I already am rather than take it all over? And I think that's a journey we all go on, right? There's no like blueprint for this is exactly how you do it or not. But I think it's just interesting.
And if someone tells you that, don't listen.
Yeah.
Run away. If they say, I know how this is going to work and this is how you should do it, walk away.
Yeah.
Because there is no blueprint. And you are on your journey with your unique set of circumstances, with your unique partner, with your unique soul, with your unique needs and your unique child and your child's needs. It's going to look very different from what I did or what the research says.
Yeah, and then even from like child 1 to 2 to 3. Yeah.
Yes.
So the reason I guess became interested in this whole topic was when I started to learn about limiting beliefs and how they're formed. And we spoke about this last time. I've had many conversations around it, and essentially limiting beliefs come out of this childhood phase of our life where we learn certain things, we take on certain beliefs. And so I've always been very interested in that initial phase, whilst that's not necessarily my immediate future. It is in the next 5 or so years. And I've always thought, I wonder if there is a way I feel like optimize is the wrong word because this is not a strategy for me. Maybe are there any things I can do to help create an environment where those limiting beliefs are actually positive where those limiting beliefs don't exist at all? So my question is there a way for a child to have no limiting beliefs in the right environment?
No, there isn't, because you are not the only thing that is in their environment. there is media, there is school systems, there are teachers, there are friends, there are peer groups. So, no. They will have their own journey. They will have their own path. Now, as a parent, you have a lot of influence on that child. And I think encouraging children and not perfection. We should not seek perfection. We should seek the good enough mother. Mm-hmm. And we want to be a good enough mother. This is Winnicott's terms, where there's all this like pressure on mothers to just be perfect. And I would say, don't be perfect, be good enough. And be attuned. Be attuned to that child, be attuned to what they need, and be encouraging to give courage to that child. So whenever those limiting beliefs do show up, that they are not possessed by those limiting beliefs. They can encounter them, they can tackle them, they can challenge them. They have a strong enough sense of self that says, I am more than just this thought. That's what we want to create. We want to create children with a strong sense of self. And the thing that's getting in the way of that strong sense of self, I believe, and I'm sure the research will soon enough confirm, is social media. And so there are other things you could do is by pushing out social media, really talking to them about conscious use of social media, how to, and then also developing ways where they learn about themselves more, whether it's their own therapeutic process, whether it's the board game, the Smart Heart board game, whether it's you having those types of conversations about what do you think about this? Hey, I want to wear this. And it comes with very basic instructions sometimes. Like they want to wear blue jeans and, a tank top, and it's like really cold outside. Okay, well, you have to wear a jacket. Do you want to wear this one or this one? Giving them choices. So they develop this kind of I have a choice sense of self, right? When we do everything for our children and we make all the decisions for them and we solve all the problems for them and we protect them from everything, that's when they don't develop a sense of self that then can tackle those limiting beliefs when they do show up in adulthood. Or in life, actually.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up. Again, something I think about a lot. For me, Instagram, Facebook, all that, it picked up towards the end of my high school years. So I feel like at that point I had developed enough to have worked out life without social media. But I think gone are those days. And I think it's really difficult now to say, I mean, I know people do it. They say there's just a straight ban. No one's on social media. But I also, for me personally, I think that's difficult in terms of social integration and getting them used to technology and whatnot. So I don't know what my position is going to be. I think that's a little while off for me. But I always do think about how social media makes me feel. And I'm an adult that has done a lot of work on myself. Even not even from a self-perception point of view, even from my ability to focus, right? I think about how I used to study in high school. I used to be able to sit there for 3-4 hours. Now I'm in meetings turning my phone over. I'm not proud of it, but it's the distraction training that we have done to ourselves through the short form content, the way we use social media. So how did you implement this with your kids? Was it an age you allowed them to do it? Like you spoke about conscious social media use. Can you share just what that looked like for you?
Well, it's a ban until you're 18. So they got phones around 15, 16. They didn't have phones before that. We did have one phone where all their friends had that number, and it was a shared phone where they could WhatsApp and make plans if they needed to. But social media for my eldest daughter was 18. My son is an athlete. He's at boarding school. So for him, he needed an account to show his football stuff. But he's at boarding school. He doesn't have access to his phone all day. So I feel comfortable that, okay, every now and then if he posts something on there. And he's 17. And my third son is 16. He doesn't have it. We have that conversation every year because he really, unlike the other two who just weren't that into it and they just were like, okay, fine. He really wants to be on it. And he knows that I will give him anything. I will do anything. I will say yes to anything. But I will not let him get on social media. And I've shared a lot of information, a lot of documentaries, a lot of research. There's enough research to scare him, to be like, okay, this is not an arbitrary, like, oh, you can't be, this is not a power trip.
Yeah.
I'm not just making up this rule because I want to make your life miserable. I love that you have a social life. I'm really not even like, oh, did you come home on your curfew? I don't do these types of things. I give him a lot of rope. I trust him a lot. I show him that I trust him a lot in the real world. I know his friends. I know who they are. I know what they do. And so I allow that space for him. And my daughter, who is 10, she knows it too, that it's just not going to happen until you're 18 or out of high school is what I recommend. Get out of high school, get through high school, and get into college. So, because I know what it does. And by that time, some of their habits have been formed and they kind of know life without it. And I'm hoping that they will continue on that way. For example, my eldest daughter, she's just not that into it when it comes to social media, and it's not something she spends a lot of time on. But I do know about the highly, highly addictive apps that these are, and so I would say postpone as much as possible.
And you spoke about there's a lot of research and kind of documentaries. What's like the most startling facts or truths that you've come across about the impact it has on young adults or teenagers?
Oh, I mean, all of it is startling. The rates of depression and suicide are higher on people who use it more than 3 hours or more. Teenagers, right? Mental health issues. Girls struggle with a lot more body image issues. The ones who use it, and it's usually like 2 to 3 hours, but they're using it for that amount of time. It's called the super peer. When we talk about peer pressure, this is the super peer. There's no voice of any parent that can compete with what's out there with thousands and thousands of images. The objectification of women that girls are internalizing, where, plastic surgeries and body type of surgeries are happening a lot earlier because they want the filtered look. They don't like the way they look. So there's just a lot. I mean, you don't even have to scratch the surface. You just have to Google teen social media, and every day something new is being released. We are in a loneliness epidemic, and we have been most connected than we have ever been. We are more connected than we have ever been connected. And yet we sit in the same room disconnected to each other. So, I mean, I don't need the research, and I didn't need it. 10 years ago when everyone around my children was given phones at the age of 9, and they were on social media by then. No, I didn't know. I didn't need it at that time. I didn't need the research to say that this is not going to be good for us. I would recommend reading the research of Cheryl Turkle. She's an MIT researcher who wrote about, I think she wrote the book Alone Together. That's a really good book, but there's so many other good books that I can send you links for, which people can read, which talk about the effects of this on young brains, but also on just us as human beings. And the reason why we're talking about this, we're talking about parenting. And what I've seen now is that teenagers and children and teenagers have just a more fragile sense of self now. They don't know what their values are. They don't know who they are. They know who they are in relation to what is liked. So if I wear this and you like that, I like that. So I will wear more of this. But if I wear this and you don't like that, then I will not wear this, even though I liked it. So there's a lot of noise that starts to happen in a stage of their life where their task is identity formation. The task of adolescence is identity formation. And what is happening when there is so much noise and they don't know who they are? They're not supposed to know who they are, but they're being told who they should be by a super peer.
It's very interesting, scary, ironic. Yeah, but I mean, all you have to do is reflect on how it makes you feel. I'd say I'm a very grounded, self-aware person, and it shakes me,
That's
so
it.
the concept of a super peer makes a lot of sense to me. If we kind of take this back like 10 years, because obviously, I mean, teenage years are hard enough on their own,
Yes.
trying to navigate like who you are, what you like, who you get on with, what kind of friends you want. So when you add in that, it's just like a whole nother layer. An experience I didn't personally have. Like I said, it came a bit later in my life. But if we kind of go back and like to something that's more like could probably start around toddler age, maybe earlier, is TV shows, right? This is also something I'm really starting to think about. And I've seen people online talking about how older style television shows, if you're going to show them TV, is better because there's less, it's less
Stimulating.
Yeah, less stimulating, right? Because now it kind of mimics how you use social media, and you're training that from an even younger age. So what's your stance on like modern TV best practices, within the context of what we've been talking about raising kind of self-aware children who are grounded and can connect with their emotions? Are there shows, there's great movies like Inside Out, which I think is just beautiful. It's a great movie. Is it good to show them things like that, like kind of pick and choose what you're showing them? Or is it like, are you a no TV kind of advocate as well?
I think, I typically follow the American Pediatric Association guidelines. So on how much tech use there should be. Under the age of 2, you should limit it as much as possible. Now, you're on a long flight, we're watching iPad, okay, that's okay. But on the day-to-day, like when they're in the car, there's a lot of people who give children iPads when they're in the car. I wouldn't do that. You're basically, at that time, they might be throwing a fit, they might be throwing, but that's when they need to learn how to self-soothe. Or we might sing a song, or I might say, okay, let's play I Spy with my little eye. Like, these are moments where you're saying you need to find another way to entertain yourself.
Yeah.
So what are you using it for is probably a really important question. Are you using it because they're annoying you right now and you just, like, here, just look at this? If that's the case, then you're basically teaching them that's going to be the way they soothe themselves.
Interesting.
So don't do it. When they're sitting at the dinner table and you're trying to have a conversation with your partner and they're interrupting you, is that when you give it to them? I wouldn't do that, because they see how conversations are had during this time. This is what modeling is. And a lot of children who are neurotypical are showing signs that look like autism, that they're on the autism spectrum. They don't know how to hold eye contact. They don't know how to have a conversation. They don't know how to express themselves. They don't know how to read social cues because they had an iPad in their face the whole time that they were growing up. And, he's a fussy eater, but he eats. Every time I give him an iPad, I can just put the food in his mouth. He doesn't even know that he's eating. I wouldn't do that. Because now you're teaching someone to unconsciously eat. And we're looking years ahead, and you're dealing with someone who has weight issues or insulin issues or. So how are you using it? Is it for educational? Is it because, 1 hour a day is okay? Limit it as much as possible. Real life interaction, toys. My son, my second son, he drove me insane with the Tupperware drawer. He would just go open the door and take out, and I'm like really kind of, really organized in the way I organize my Tupperware with the size in it. But he would just and it was so frustrating. It would have been so much easier to just put the TV on, just sit. And it's hypnotic. They're absolutely consumed. They're absolutely into it. And it's just a moment of peace. But that moment of peace is going to catch up later in life when they can't do the things they need to do for themselves. And so, we need to find other ways to help them entertain themselves, to help them distract themselves, to help them soothe themselves, to help them learn. And when they're young, especially, 0 to 3, it is it's called the window of sensitivity and a window of opportunity. Their brain is on a accelerated growth at that point. Everything they touch, everything they see, everything they encounter, every eye contact they have, it's firing neurons and building pathways at that point. So before the age of 3, I would really limit it as much as you can. And like I said, we have those moments where you just say, okay, just take it. And I'm going to say, give yourself permission, because having a mother who's having a mental breakdown is also not good for the child. Sure. So if you're in that space at that time, it's okay. But just day-to-day practice, find other ways. You know those little scribbly pads where they hold a thing and they draw, and then they, like, there's toys which are not stimulating, but they're very engaging. Work with those.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, where we kind of opened with was just model who you are, and they'll learn kind of how to, deal with their emotions and express themselves. But I do think when you drill down to daily practices like this, that also has such a big effect. Like, just hearing you talk, I'm thinking in my head, that's so powerful. Like the disconnect or the break of I'm feeling an emotion to I'm instantly have a soother.
It's a pacifier.
You think of people you meet that are entitled, or they have small tolerance windows and things like that. Like I'm correlating that in my mind to how that's formed from a young age. And when I was talking about really thinking about how different things play a role at that young age, like this is the kind of thing that has such a big impact that you don't realize. And of course, no one's to blame. Everyone's just doing the best job they can. Yes. And we've now had time to reflect and understand how these technologies work. But it's a tough one, right? Like, it's something I'm grateful to be having a conversation about now, because it just, the one thing that's stood with me is why you're giving it to them. Yeah. And just thinking about the context or the source of that. Yes. It's not always bad. It doesn't have to be bad. It can be something they enjoy, but what's the fine line? Yeah. And this kind of brings me to my next question, which you raised the concept of conscious parenting. Another term I've heard a lot of is gentle parenting. You've heard of that concept. Can you just explain to listeners what that is? And I'm just curious, do you think that there is like a style that's a little bit too extreme that gives kids too much autonomy or too much gentleness, where the balance kind of drops and you're no longer an not authoritative, but kind of like guiding figure in their lives? Like, is gentle parenting harmful to some degree?
So I don't know what people mean by gentle, because everybody has their own interpretation of what gentle means. Gentle is not the same thing as permissive. So if we look at parenting styles, there are 3 different types of parenting styles. And everybody has their own different names, and the tiger and the jellyfish and the snowplow, but the basics are this. 1 is the authoritarian parent. This parent is high expectations, low support. Then you have the permissive, which is high support, low expectations. And then you have the authoritative, which is high expectations, high support. You want to be the authoritative. You want to have high expectations. We have a set of values. We have a set of asks in this house, and I expect you to meet those. These are the consequences when you don't meet those. And you have all my support, and I will speak to you gently. Kind, gentle, firm. Kind, gentle, firm. Gentle and kind and firm does not mean aggressive. When someone says firm, I'm not saying be aggressive, be firm. Have an inner authority that's not coming from a place of dominance and control. It's coming from a place of moral clarity and a set of values that I follow. This is a no. This is not a conversation. I've had this conversation. It's still a no. So it's really important that parents be very clear as to where they're parenting from. And that for me was a very important, because every book had something to say about something. You do this, do this, do this. And I just felt so overwhelmed and so confused. Like I said, I did years of research on parenting models and which model should I adapt or adopt, and what should I be doing? And I really liked the Adlerian principles of parenting, which is don't do for your child anything they can do for themselves. I was like, I like this. I can do that. If they can tie their shoelace and it takes them 10 minutes, start 10 minutes earlier and make sure they tie their shoelace. If they can open the bottle cap by themselves, just loosen it and have them, give them some of this authority so they can start to do things for themselves. This idea that I will just love you and I will be there for you and I will do everything for you. No, that's your stuff. That's your stuff that you need to go to therapy for. You need to raise an adult. This idea that I will be this ever-giving, ever-nurturing, ever-present mother is problematic for the child who needs to grow up and be an adult and take care of themselves, And then they grow up and they're, this daddy's princess and mama's boy. And it's because they had this ever-present, ever-nurturing, ever-giving, loving mother who didn't have any, or parent, I should say, who didn't have a set of expectations from their child. So there is a point where the good mother can become the bad complex because they never became sort of self-sufficient. They didn't raise self-sufficient children. So yes, be present, be attuned. That's the one thing that I would say. Be attuned, watch their feelings, name their feelings, coach them on their feelings. This is what you're going through. Okay, let's take a few deep breaths. I see that you need some space. Mama, I don't want to talk about this. Okay, we don't have to talk about this right now. Take some space. I'm going to go over there. Just let me know when you want to talk. This, where you're saying, I honor what you're going through right now, rather than, no, we need to talk about feelings and we need to, no. Listen to the child and you kind of mirror the child. But I would say the parenting model for me that was most, that just kind of turned off all the noise inside of me was the value-centered parenting. Once I was like, okay, what is the value here? What is the value that I'm enforcing? Once I became clear about that, all the other things became, because I know I'm kind and I know I'm gentle with my kids. I have lost my lid a few times and I have apologized to my children, but I will speak to them in a respectful way. I will ask them in a respectful way. But the values are what keep me clear. And this, for example, if my child comes and says, Mama, everyone has a phone. I want a phone. Immediately, oh my God, my kid is the only one who doesn't have a phone in the class. Oh, he's going to feel left out. I don't want him to get bullied. I don't want him to feel left out. Nope, this is not where we're going to operate from. Nope. That's fear. That is not a value. What is my value? Why don't I want to give him a phone? I want him to stay connected. I don't think a 9-year-old should have a phone. What does he need a phone for? It's just so they can show that they have a phone and so they can be popular. Being popular based off of things you own, not a value. And I don't want to teach my child that just because everyone's doing it, you should do it too. That's not a good value. So that, if my children now know that if you come to me and say everyone's doing it, that's an automatic no. You better come in with a really good reason as to why we're going to do that, right? And so this is what I would say. What are your values? Become very clear about that. And why are you doing? Why are you saying yes? Be very clear about that. This is where self-awareness comes in. I will not do it because everyone else is doing it. Because I will raise someone who dismisses their own their own set of values and just do what everyone. Today it's a phone, tomorrow it'll be a Maserati you can't afford. Yeah. Because everyone else around you has one. This is not who you are. So go back to who you are and operate from that place. Go back to your values and operate from that place. And yes, be gentle, kind, and firm.
It's really interesting, even when you think about how you operate and the maybe tendencies or desires you have. Yes. Like even I'm thinking, I have a lot of friends around me who have kids. And when you start to say, oh, well, they're doing it this way or they're not doing it this way. And we have different feelings about X, Y, Z, and we just have a different opinion. And when you just reflect on your own kind of thoughts that come up, is it fear-based? Is it value-grounded based? It's just interesting because that's obviously what you're going to model and replicate. I wanted to ask you, so you mentioned the 3 types of parenting styles, which is interesting. I haven't heard of that before. And that explains a lot. I think that gentle parenting that I'm thinking about kind of sits in that permissive style. Do you think people parent based off what they were modeled or what they didn't get and wanted?
Both.
Some
people will do it exactly how it was done to them because I turned out fine. So let me be like this. My dad yelled at me. He was very critical of me. He was abusive of me. So I'm going to be like this with my child because that worked and I am who I am because of that. Okay. Or people swing to the other side. I don't want my kid to suffer the way I suffered. And so I'm going to do the opposite of that. And I will never say anything that might feel harsh to my child. And sometimes boundaries don't feel good to the child. So they become overly permissive. So if they had authoritarian parents, they might become overly permissive. Or if they, or they might become authoritarian themselves.
So these three styles, I can appreciate when you're, trying to raise an adult and independent child and teaching them about their own thoughts. I can appreciate how this all makes sense and would fit in. When we're talking about the newborn phase, right, and they're literally like dependent on you, they just sleep and eat, I enjoy reading and learning, but I do find it really overwhelming, especially with so many people having so many different opinions, right? And so you have these things about co-sleeping, about sleep training early.
I remember that.
There's so many different options.
Yeah.
Does your style of parenting have a role to play at this early newborn phase, or is it purely like we're both here surviving, just trying to work it out, just do what's right for you? Like at what point does this kick in? Is it from day zero? Or at the beginning, is there like, all right, we're codependent and let's just not stress about?
Yeah. At that point, you're not necessarily, the only boundary you might have is when you start to...
With your in-laws. No, I'm kidding.
What is that?
With your in-laws. I'm joking.
that will be important. But the only boundary is when you start to teach them how to sort of push out an hour to eat, when you're trying to train them to sleep, or when you're trying to train them to eat a little bit later, or when you're teaching them how to eat solids. Like those are the times where you might have to, or when you take away the pacifier and you might have to hold firm. I'm going to love you through this. This is not going to be easy for you. Like you show up with all your love and you do the hard thing because it's good for their dental development to not have a pacifier, even though they really want it and they're just begging you for it and they look desperate. And at that time, you just want to give them everything. That would be permissive. But how do you do, no, it's time now. We're going to say bye to Binky and we're going to do it with love. And I got you through it. And I'm going to hold you all night and I will be with you and I will love you through this. And we're going to say goodbye to Binky. So that's authoritative, where you do the hard thing, you have the expectation, but you show up with love and attunement. You don't say, come on, just grow up. That would be authoritarian. That just get over it. And that would be not attuned. That would not be saying, this is hard for you. You're just 1 year old and I know. So showing up in that way is going to be, it's probably going to start, but in the beginning, you're do what works.
Yeah.
You will have a whole set of people saying you should breastfeed, and you will have a whole set of people that will say, if it's really, making you depressed, then don't do it. Because the depressed mother is worse for the child than a breastfeeding mother is good for the child, right? You'll have a whole set of people that say you should co-sleep. And then you'll have a whole set of people that you'll raise a really, clingy child if you co-sleep. We've been doing it for like thousands of years, but just if you need to do it in a way that is safe, get a co-sleeper and sleep with your child. I think that's going to be important that you do it safely. But in the end, especially like in the first 6 months where you're just adjusting to life and this new world, do what works for you.
Yeah, I think it's like just coming back to basics. What do I generally need? How does our household operate? What makes the most sense for me intuitively?
Yes.
That's how I make decisions in my life, and I hope to roll that into parenting and really just learn on the job.
And I would say that don't just listen to Western voices, because it's a highly individualistic way of being. There's many collectivistic cultures or indigenous people where the whole family is sleeping in the same room. let alone like, the same bed. So those kids are also being raised, and they're also independent, and they're also doing great things. So make sure you have a diverse set of voices that you learn from and that you look up to that say, how is parenting done? Because it's not just this way. These guys might be publishing the book, but there's ways that we've raised children for thousands of years. And I'm going to probably bet on that than just this. And you also mentioned something about, I'm going back to something you said because it's kind of in the back of my head, which is that you wanted to raise children that were tech savvy. You said something to that.
You want them to, well, for me anyway, I'm thinking I would like a child who understands how to use tech, because I think there's a lot of advantages with it, but you don't want to overdo it.
Yes. And that is a dangerous reason as to why they should use tech, by the way. Okay. Sure, if you want to put them in a coding class and you want to teach them how to build robots, very different than giving them an iPad and having them use an iPhone that at an early age, because you want them to be tech savvy. The lowest use of technology is in Silicon Valley.
Wow.
The people who create this stuff don't give it to their children. They know the addictive algorithms that have them in these kind of feedback, dopamine feedback type of loops. Steve Jobs didn't give his kids an iPad. They don't give these children these apps. So I would just go off of that. And yes, put them in the coding class, put them in the robotics class, but that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for this high stimulation dopamine that we want to avoid.
Yeah, and perhaps with some slight reflection there, that's my own feelings of, I don't really want to be like the odd one out, and be the only one that's left behind. And that's perhaps my own projection into that comment.
Yeah. And that is a very important thing to be aware of as a parent, because I'm telling you, you sit with 3 mothers and my child, can spell rhinoceros, and he was like 9 months old. Like, they'll say things to you and you're like, oh my God, am I not doing something right? Like, what have I done? And your child is like, rolling around in mud at that time, and so you will start to feel insecure about like, should my child be reading rhinoceros and doing spelling bees at the age of 1? Because it's becoming highly competitive and parents are highly anxious. But those types of parents typically are not very self-aware. And their child becomes this project that they are sort of living out through. And Carl Jung said that the biggest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of a parent. And when it's the unlived life, whether it's your dreams, whether it's your hopes, whether it's your unprocessed emotions, whether it's your wounds, whether I don't want to be the one left out, I don't want to be the one left behind. That's something you should take to therapy, not play out on your child. And that's the stuff that is driving a lot of these parents. And these kids are under so much pressure because you got to get into this school and you got to get into that one. And then once you get into that one, you have to start doing internship. And you have to, it's never ending. And the children are not living a childhood anymore. They're in a rat race from the moment they're born, because you got to get into that top nursery. Then you've got to get into that top kindergarten. It's relentless and it's not fair and it's not right.
Yeah, and it's true. You just apply some critical thinking and how have you been putting those expectations on yourself? How have you been assessing your own self-worth and self-value? It's something I've been speaking about a lot on the show, because I was raised in go to school, go to uni, get a job in the corporate world. You're based off your output. That looks very different to me now. Yes. And it's something I've had to unlearn, and I'm still admittedly unlearning, and I don't want to project that onto my child, especially if I have a daughter, because I just feel like as females we have so much inherent value that we just have because of the way we are and what we can do in this life. I think it's going through this now, I'm just in awe of the female body and creating life. And but this has just been very insightful. I think just constantly reflecting, right, and not trying to be perfect. And I always remember this one thing I heard, which is don't be afraid to apologize to your children. I think that's really powerful, because you're not going to get it right. And I think it's good for them and you to see where you've made mistakes. That's something I'm trying to practice in my relationship as well.
Yes, I think that's such an important thing that you just said, that we don't seek perfection. We seek good enough, and we let them see us real. My kids have seen me lose my lid. I have lost it. There were times where it was just like, oh my God, I'm like, and then they've seen me, go and apologize that was not right. An apology is not, that was not right, but you were being really irritated. No, that's not an apology, parents. The apology is, that was not right. I should not have yelled. I really lost my cool, and I need to find a way to keep the lid on. And I'm going to work on that. And that's it. And they see a real human being doing real things, and a whole human being. My children have seen me pursue my degrees. I've consulted with them once I re-engaged recently in doing certain degrees. And I said, I need your support. Are you with me? And they said, yes, we support you. And that means that there will be times where I'm away from home, and there will be times where I'm going to be busy during dinner time, and that is, they're saying that's okay. So it was a joint decision that was made, but they see a mother who is a whole person, who has friends, who cares for her parents, who works, who still studies, who still loves to learn, who wants to be with them also. Like, this is a whole person that you're getting. And I'm hoping that by doing this, I give them permission to be whole people too.
That's beautiful. Something I hope I can, bring into my parenting life too. And no doubt we'll be chatting throughout the years as the different stages come on. But I just want to thank you so much for coming on today and taking what was already an incredible first interview, which I'll link in the show notes for anyone who hasn't had the chance to watch it, and now drawing that out into a new experience that I'm going through. And I've learned a lot today, as always. So thank you very much for your time. I really am grateful for it.
Thank you, Erica, for having me.
Thank you.